Welcome to Creepy Joe's Horror Show! With special guest, Slip Rick the Skeleton.
It's not my fault the babes like me, man.
Also, Flo!
Perverts.
And don't forget about your legendary loser host himself, Creepy Joe!
Welcome to Creepy Joe's Horror Show. Tonight we have Return of the Living Dead from 1985.
The Return of the Living Dead is a 1985 American comedy horror film written and directed by Dan O'Bannon in his directional debut, and starring Clu Gallagher, James Karen, Tom Matthews, and Don Calfa. The film tells the story of how a warehouse owner, accompanied by his two employees, mortician friend, and a group of teenage punks, deal with the accidental release of a horde of unkillable, brain-hungry zombies onto an unsuspecting town over the 4th of July weekend.
Alright, Return of the Living Dead. This is probably one of the greatest films I've ever seen growing up as a child and as a teenager and as an adult. It's still one of the greatest films of all time to me. You know, it is for the genre, for horror comedy, or, you know, just as far as 80s nostalgia, this movie has everything in it that I could possibly want in a movie.
Well, then we just got to destroy it completely until there's nothing left.
Okay, it has zombies, it has, you know, some gore in it, it has, you know, some babes in it, it has...
Like naked babes.
Yeah, dude. It has everything that you could possibly want in an 80s horror movie. I mean, in any horror movie, period. If they still made movies like this to this day, then, I mean, they don't, but this movie's pretty much perfect to me. Directed by Dan O'Bannon, his debut film, actually. Sadly, he passed away at the age of 63 in 2009, but we'll get to him later. But this movie has a phenomenal cast. I mean, it's one of the best casts. I don't know why, but they just work so well together. Everything about it is perfect. We have Freddy, who's played by Tom Matthews. We have Frank, who's played by James Karen. We have Ernie, who's played by Don, how do you even pronounce that? Calfa? Hopefully. Bert, who's played by Clu Gallagher. And we have Scuzz, who's played by Brian Peck, I think. I think that's who he's played by, yeah. We have Trash, who's played by, you know, the great Linnea Quigley. Tina, who plays a small part, who's played by Beverly Randolph. Casey, who's played by Joel Shepard. Chuck, who's played by John Philbin, who's in love with Casey. One of my, well, the last two characters are probably my favorite in the whole entire movie, but Suicide, who's also no longer with us, very sadly, played by Mark Venturini. And we have Spider, who is one of the greatest characters of the whole movie, played by Miguel Nunez. The film starts out at a medical supply warehouse, and they say all the events portrayed in this movie are true. The names are all real people, blah, 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 blah. Great way to start out, you know, a horror movie, even though there's nothing factual about this movie. But, or the events portrayed in it. But it starts out at the medical supply warehouse where you have Freddy and Frank and Bert, the boss. You know, they're getting ready for the 4th of July weekend, and Freddy's new at the job. He's learning the ropes. Frank's training him.
Right, you're doing very nice work.
Thanks.
You're going to be fine in the warehouse business.
And Then you have, it cuts to the teenagers. I don't even know if they're teenagers or if they're in their 20s. They look like some of them could possibly be around 30 years old. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's priceless.
Hey, that's Freddy!
Yeah, what the fuck is Freddy up to these days anyway?
He got himself a job.
So, talk about 80s nostalgia, and you have, kind of like a preppy girl, Tina, hanging out with, these punks, and it works. It's good because I feel like you have this innocent kind of girl with these bad dudes, and bad girls, and I don't know. It's a good dynamics.
Don't be afraid. I'm buzzing in the damn head.
So they're looking for a place to party, and they find an abandoned cemetery that, well, I don't know. It's just a trashed cemetery. It's full of graffiti. It's destroyed. And they're waiting for Freddy to get off work to look for another place to party, I guess. And while Freddy and Frank are inside talking, they're discussing Night of the Living Dead, which they do acknowledge that was a movie that was based on a true case, supposedly. And it's great, they talk about Pittsburgh at the VA hospital, the Veterans Affairs Hospital.
Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead? Back in 1969 in Pittsburgh at the VA hospital.
And they released a chemical that was made to spray on marijuana or something, and it made the dead come back alive and move around. And so he says, we had the chemical down in the basement. It was a typical Army fuck up, he says, so we're going to go down there and I'll show you the corpses in the basement.
See them? Corpses.
They go down there, they release the chemical on accident, and it goes through the vents, they breathe it in, they pass out, and then you go right to the intro. Well, you go right to it,
Well, these things were made by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
They wake up and they find out that some of the other cadavers in the movie, which also I need to add the details, okay? Like the split dogs that are in the, it's a medical supply warehouse, so there's like split dogs. There's insects that are pinned to in picture frames, shadow boxes, whatever, to study. There's a cadaver. There's cadavers in the freezer in there, to study, and there's so much detail. Even the split dogs come back alive. They hear the split dog barking.
What's wrong with you?
The butterflies and the insects are actually moving around.
Jesus Christ! We can think, we can't think! Come on!
They really paid attention to detail in this, and of course the cadaver is alive.
Jesus! Jesus!
So they call Bert, they're panicking, they call Bert. Bert comes down, they, have to dismember the cadaver, the naked cadaver, which is a great part. They come down, they can't destroy the body. Even after they dismember it, it's still coming after them. So they come to the conclusion that they have to incinerate the body. They have to burn it, or they're talking acid, whatever. And there's a mortuary across the street, near the trashed cemetery where all the friends are at.
Well, then we just gotta destroy it completely until there's nothing left.
Acid!
It just so happens that Bert is friends with Ernie, the mortician there, who's played by Don Alpha, and I really like his character too.
Sorry, Ernie.
Over there, they take bags full of this cadaver over to the mortuary.
What the hell is in those bags?
And they agree to, they burn it. And of course the smoke from the burning cadaver that has chemicals all over it goes up in the air, and then it rains. And then that's when, you know that the chemical's going into the ground. They show the whole montage.
The fuck was that?
The friends that are in the cemetery, their skin's burning. They run back into the 1960 Cadillac. I think it's a 1960 anyway. I could be wrong. But the bitchin' Cadillac, that Suicide has, which I left out a very key part. There's a very nude dance that goes on in the cemetery by Trash, and She has a shaved bush and everything. I mean, it's pretty groundbreaking for the time. And but anyway, you'll have to watch it to find out. It's like full-blown nudity, full-blown everything, and that's one of the most memorable parts of this movie for most people, not necessarily me, but so she's naked and the rain's pouring down and it's like acid rain. These chemicals. And then the corpses start coming out of the graves and everything leaks down onto their bodies, and that's basically that. That's where it starts getting crazy. The police basically barricade everything in after things start getting bad because Ernie and Bert call paramedics for for Frank and Freddie because they're really starting to get sick from breathing in these chemicals.
Pulse, your blood pressure is 0/0. You have no pupillary response, no reflexes. Your temperature is 70 degrees.
And the paramedics come, they find out that they're not really alive. They're living and breathing, but they have no heartbeat, no blood pressure, no pulse, and their temperature is room temperature.
Because technically, you're not alive. Except you're conscious, so we don't know what it means.
Those two paramedics that show up go back out to their ambulances, and then that's when all the corpses from the cemetery come out and attack them and eat their brains. Yes, brains, because this movie, brains, it's the first movie where brains are introduced. You know, you have Night of the Living Dead where they're chewing on limbs, they're eating whatever. This movie is where the zombies, it's the first movie to introduce the zombies eating brains and brains only, because brains make the pain go away from being dead.
What about the pain?
The pain of being dead.
So that's where that comes from. This is the first movie where that's introduced. And it revolutionized the whole zombie genre for future, you know, films and whatever.
It hurts to be dead.
Shit's starting to really hit the fan out there. I believe someone says that, actually, as well. And, you know, I'm skipping around here, but, like, you know, they end up they go to the medical supply. All the kids that were in the cemetery, kids, I don't know if I should call them kids, but all the friends of Freddy's that were in, all the punks run to the medical supply warehouse.
That's Tina. Through that door!
Where, you know, they're looking for Freddy, but Freddy and Frank are over at the mortuary getting checked out by paramedics. And they run into the cadaver that came out of the tank in the basement, where actually Tina, Freddy's girlfriend, was already there looking for him. And that is where the Tar Man is introduced, and they, you know, that's where Suicide gets attacked, and the Tar Man bites into his head, and they lock him into the basement. So there's a group of people in the medical supply warehouse locked in, and the rest of them are at the mortuary locked in. They don't even know that the cemetery came alive yet over at the mortuary. So they end up, you know, Spider and a couple of the other guys, Spider and Scuzz, I believe, run over to the mortuary. They end up over at the mortuary, and they all get split up, and then that's where they inform Ernie and Bert that, you know, there's corpses all over, crawling all over the grounds, and they're eating anybody.
Are you on PCP? Someone's on in the Jones, man. Just let us in. All right, come in, come in.
And they start boarding everything up, and then that's where Scuzz gets taken out. And I mean, I gotta throw in here that Spider is such an amazing character. He's rocking the greatest cherry curl I've ever seen in my life. He's his character is just, it's probably the most memorable out of all of them, I guess you could say. I don't want to say he's the better actor of all of them, because Freddy does a great job. They all do a great job in their own way. But Spider is definitely my favorite if I had to choose one. And so I guess to conclude it, the zombies break out of the barricade, man. They take over the police. And then the military has to come through and they just bomb the shit out of the whole town. Like, the whole town, they show it at the end. And then it starts to rain, and then it starts to happen all over again.
I wouldn't worry about the fires, General. The rain is taking care of that right now.
But there's a lot more that happens throughout, obviously, that I can't wrap up in a 16-minute video. And I don't really want to, because I want you to go watch it yourself. If you haven't seen this movie, I mean, come on now, just get with the program here. Go see Return of the Living Dead. It's you know, it's like a cheesecake waiting in your kitchen to be eaten. Go eat it. Go experience the masterpiece.
Bert, Frank, we have a little problem.
So, I guess my most memorable moment, well, it's not really a moment, but Frank yelling the entire movie. James Cameron, he's always screaming, "Oh God, what are we gonna do?" I mean, like, the entire movie, he's losing it.
Listen to this.
Oh, Jesus!
Freddy ends up, you know, he just wants to, you know, eat Tina's brains, his girlfriend's brains. No one makes it out alive, I mean, sadly, at the end of this, because, like I said, they bomb the whole town, and that's kind of what happens. But my most memorable, I don't really know, this is like one of the few films that I can't really say, like, the most memorable part of this movie, because the whole movie is great. Like, every part's memorable, equally is great. Of course, like, Tarman's a great part. The naked cadaver is probably the funniest part. You know, he comes out, you know, bare-assed. He tackles Bert, you know, and then Freddy and Frank get him off, and they dismember him. That's probably, like, the most memorable, I guess. I mean, aside from, you know, Trash, you know, putting on a freaking, you know, she's dancing nude on top of an altar in the cemetery. That's gonna be most people's, but, like, I try to think of, you know, not the most obvious. I try to think of the most interesting one, other than a nude dance. But which Suicide has, like, the funniest line in the cemetery where, you know, he's really, like, he's always pissed off, and he's always like, you know, you guys don't appreciate me. You know, he's extremely pissed to have to hang out with his friends, like, the whole movie. Well, up until he dies, kind of early on, but he says a really funny line where he's like, "You guys think this is a costume? You think this is, you know, all a joke? This isn't a costume. This is a way of life."
What do you think this is all about? You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
Like, he's dead serious, and the whole time Trash is naked and, like, humping all over him, and she's like, "Ooh, I like it creepy."
Fuck you, man. Fuck you all.
I like it spooky.
And he's just like, "Get out of my face and have some respect for the dead," or something.
Hey, what's wrong with you, man? Show some fucking respect for the dead, will ya?
It's just like, it's hilarious. Like, every one of their personalities mixing with each other is hysterical. It's great the whole way through. But I'm gonna rate this a 5 out of 5 because it is the most perfect, one of the most perfect horror films, just films in general, man. Like, I could watch this movie every day and not get sick of it. I've seen it 100 times. I've seen it more than 100 times. That's pretty sad to admit, but it's one of those movies that, like, you can watch every night to go to sleep to, and, you know, get a couple chuckles in while you're closing your eyes. It's fantastic.
It hurt more than you can imagine.
But that being said, we're going to move on to Dan O'Bannon's movie. So, because Dan O'Bannon, this was his first film, and he's a very important director. He went on to direct some of the most important films in the genre.
Top 10 Dan O'Bannon films.
Alien in 1979. We have Dark Star, 1974. Aliens, 1986. Life Force, 1985. Dead and Buried, 1981. There's no order here, obviously. The Resurrected in 1991. Invaders from Mars in 1986. Heavy Metal, I love Heavy Metal. That's another movie you need to check out. Heavy Metal in 1981. And then Total Recall in 1990. And Alien vs. Predator in 2007, amongst many others. But he was very important. He writer, director, obviously some of these movies he wrote because they were before, this movie. This movie's obviously 1985, but this is the first movie that he directed. So, Return of the Living Dead, one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but it doesn't suck. It's one of the few that don't suck. So get into it. Watch it tonight. I believe it's on Tubi. You can watch it for free right now, but they might have taken it off depending on when you're watching this. Movies aren't on there forever, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere and rent it for $1.99 at this point, and it's worth every penny. So thanks for hanging out, and until next time, stay creepy.